Hey guys, what's up? This is FallsBulls123 and I am just so fucking excited. You wanna know why? So if you guys don't know what's happening, the Reading Rush is about to start. And I want to, just get ahead of things, film some of my introductions for, before we start, and talk about what I'm going to be reading and some of my expectations for, what's going to be like. Because I've never done a readathon before, so I'm really excited. I think it's also going to be a great opportunity for two reasons. One, I just haven't really had a lot of social interaction with the quarantine, and so I think this is going to be a nice way to sort of have that sense of community, especially since a lot of my other sort of online ways of connecting with people, through the ARGs, is just really not happening because of everything with the coronavirus. Oops, guess I got demonetized, but I don't monetize videos anyway, so whatevs. And I think, second of all, it's going to be a nice way of, I would say, dipping my toe in, but it's really like plunging headfirst into a salty, briny depth and grasping for air as I slowly suffocate into, the pool. And so, just sort of, getting my water wings, getting my sea legs, whatever the metaphor is, I'm bad at that. And so, yeah, it's going to be a fun way of sort of, getting into bookish content and just really starting my journey into, I guess, more into this community, which I'm really enjoying just sort of experiencing, and I'm trying to participate more in it. So hopefully you guys will accept me with open arms and not call me like a fake reader or something, because that sounds like dumb gatekeeping bullshit, and I don't know how that would work. Like, what exactly would a fake reader be, But let's shut up now and keep talking, and get on to, what books I'm going to be reading. So, if you're not familiar with the Reading Rush, every year they have challenges, and there are 7 challenges for this year. Wow, you're good at saying words, Ryan. So I'm going to go through them, talk about what books I chose. Hopefully I'll be able to read all of my 7 books for my TBR this year, plus the book of the, the book club book. But if not, I'm just going to try to finish reading them, afterwards. Like I do with, Inktober every year. Sometimes. So, let's get started. So, first up is choose a book based on the color of your birthstone. So, I thought that was a pretty interesting, premise. I think it's really fun because everyone has different birthstones. Some people actually have multiple birthstones. And it's actually a little confusing depending on what sort of standard you're doing, since there are not only many different birthstones based off of different, religions and cultures, but there's also a consensus between modern standardized birthstones from the 1960s when all the American Jewelry Society came together and said, what are the birthstones? And they figured that shit out. But there's also a traditional ancient set of birthstones, which are also debated depending on, what sort of early classical culture that you're discussing and talking about. It's actually a very fascinating concept that we're not going to get in here because this is a book, video, and not a video about the history of, birthstones. So, what's this birthstone for November, Ryan? Because you're a Scorpio, and that means that you're dark, sexy, and mysterious. So that's going to be citrine and orange topaz. Maybe I'll put pictures up there so you can see, but I might be too lazy, so if I don't, that's what happened. And I'm thinking, okay, basically the idea is orange. Really, really bright orange. And I'm thinking, I got orange books. But what's the orangest book I got? How can I really sell it on the concept of orange as a color, an identity, and as a style? And so I'm thinking, well, bitch, what about A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess? This book is so orange that, it can't get oranger. Literally, they could make a book that just says the word orange on it. And bitch, I'm saying no, this book is oranger than you. This book is so orange, it actually has a word that rhymes with it. That's how orange it is. But Ryan, now that you're pontificating, what's the book about? A Clockwork Orange is, I'm just going to hold it up so you can actually see it some more, because we like those pictures. A Clockwork Orange is essentially a 1970s dystopian novel, which is actually, as, science fiction goes, pretty prevalent, pretty well known, and essentially deals with this far future where society has these really extreme violent gangs. And so our main character is essentially in one of these gangs. He talks about, his deviancy, his criminality, until he's kidnapped, until he is convicted, rather. And essentially, mandatorily brainwashed to become a model citizen. And so it discusses, like, just sort of like the ethics of that, and also just the discussion of like criminality in this society. So it's pretty edgy, if we're being honest. Like, this is maximum edge. But it also has a lot of really interesting social commentary, and was actually made into a movie by Stanley Kubrick. So this copy, I believe this was printed in 74, but I'm going to double check. 72, sorry. The book was written in 1963. This copy was printed in 72. And this book itself is actually meant to be advertising the Kubrick motion picture. So that's just like, a little bit of history, and also a little bit of evidence that the books on my shelves are a bit more older. I don't tend to read like a lot of modern literature. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't tend to read contemporary literature as much as I usually read like a lot of older 70s and 80s or classics. So I guess that gives you kind of like, an insight into like sort of the books that I read and the books that I own. There you go. So next up is a challenge is pick a book with the word "the" in the title. So that's pretty easy. I like that. One thing I like about Books for Lala's channel is that she has those magic word? No, that's not it. Basically, she has these readathons where she'll like pick a single word and then read books based on that word. So I like shit like that because like that's such a fun idea that there's this commonality between the book titles, but then you read a very diverse and eclectic set of books. So I thought that was pretty fun because I have a lot of books with that in the title. It's pretty common. Articles are important for language people, and I chose The Ghost Bible by Kathy Kennedy Trapp. Is it Trapp or Tap? Tap. So The Ghost Mobile is essentially a magic realism middle grade novel about a bunch of kids who go to bumfuck Kansas and basically start hanging out with some ghosts in a bookmobile. And that is the legitimate plot of it. It's not particularly like the most, I guess, action-packed or in super plot-heavy book. It's mostly just about the characters and kind of adjusting to just, I guess, their life in Kansas from their big sort of metropolitan lifestyle. And it's a light, fun read. It's a nice, solid book. Nothing super big happens. There's not these great levels of characterization and drama. It's just some kids having fun with magical ghost books. And what's not to love about that, fam? What's not to love? So next up is movie to book adaptations. You're supposed to have chosen a book of a movie that you loved watching. And I like that. I think that's fun. I love movie. Well, let's be honest. I don't watch movie adaptations of books because either I've read the book, I fucking loved it, and I don't want to be disappointed again. I went and bought a ticket to watch a series of unfortunate events in theaters, and I was sad. I was disappointed. I was heart-wrenchingly gutted from groin to neck over that movie. It was trash, it was travesty, it was tragedy. But let's not talk about that. So I was a little sneaky bitch. I did something that was a little bit of a tweak on it. But instead of choosing a book that was a book-to-movie adaptation, I chose a movie-to-book adaptation. Like what? Some movies, not many, have gotten novelizations based off of the screenplay. And you're thinking, Ryan, why the fuck would they do that? That just doesn't really make sense to condense a highly visual medium into a book form. And it's that's kind of true. It's not really a great idea, which is why they don't do it very often. But they did do that for War Games, written by David Biscoff, based off of the original screenplay by people I don't know, Lawrence Lasker and Walter F. Perkins. This is literally just a novelization of the events that happened in War Games. And you're thinking, is that going to be a good book? I don't really know. I've never been able to finish it. I always started reading it, I'd TBF it, and then I'd just put it back on my shelf because this shit's too cool not to own. It's kind of awesome to own a movie to book adaptation even if I have no interest in the book itself. I'm thinking, Ryan, this is a golden opportunity. Bitch, you got a golden ticket. Run with it. Run, bitch, run. This is what we're doing. So that's what I'm doing. Next up is, choose the first book that you touched. I was having some fun with this. Originally, I was just like, really just random grabbed the story of the Van Trapp Singers because apparently I needed to flex my obscure book knowledge. But then I thought to myself, I really don't want to read this. It's much too old of a book, and I mostly just own it for my collection. It's not really something I have an intention of reading. You can debate whether that is an ethical or, good thing to do, but honestly, go fuck yourself. I am allowed to own whatever book I want and decide whether or not I want to read it a lot based on, the rarity and condition of it. But now that I've done, defending my honor, let's actually go to the clip where I choose the book that I picked. Let's do it now. So, guys, the prompt is basically pick the first book you touched, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I could literally just go to my shelf and go and find a book. But I'm like, what if I game the system? What if I was a little sneaky bitch and just I did something a bit more fun than just randomly grabbing a book at random? Because for all I know I'm going to have shit luck and I'm going to pick a fat book. Let's see, I'm just looking over there and seeing what I have. The complete works of Sherlock Holmes. Fuck that shit. La Morte de Arthur. Really boring and long. It by Stephen King. All of these would be not good choices for a readathon. And so I'm thinking, okay, Ryan, well, what if you just picked 10 random books, and then you picked one of those, at random. So essentially an extreme randomized, selection. And I'm thinking, that's some good shit. It follows the spirit of, why we're doing this, challenge. And I love the concept of it. So, 4 of these books are new. They're on my TBR. I have not read them ever. Even, I've never cracked them open. I literally just got them today. And the other remaining 6 are literally just random books that I had on my shelf. All of these I try to have under 200 pages because it's a readathon and I want to read short books so that I can maximize my reading experience. Also, I'm probably planning on having at least the new ones going to be on my future TBR sometime, the next month, the month after that, whenevs. So, the possible options are The Cat Who Ate Danish Martin by Lillian Jackson Brunn, Halloween Party by R.L. Stine, The Awful Apple Orchard by M.D. Spencer, Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's Hung You in the Closet and I'm Feeling So Sad by Arthur L. Kopit. This is actually a play, in case you were wondering. I Was Told There'd Be Cake, essays by Sloane Crosley. This is new. I like the cover on this. This is really pretty. Rammer, oh, you can't see it. Rammer, Jammer, Yellow Hammer by Warren St. John. Also a collection of essays. The Prince, Nikolai Machiavelli. Eight Tales of Terror by Edgar Allan Poe. This is obviously a short story anthology of his. I also believe that there was a similar movie. It was in the 1960s, had Vincent Price in it, that had a similar title. I think that's just called Tales of Terror. But this is just an anthology of 8 of his short stories. And as you can see, it's definitely old. It does not have a front cover on it. That's how you know how old it is, because some of my books are really ratty because I've had them for years. Romno 1/2, Volume 2. I don't own the first one, just the second. Don't ask me why. And The Handmaid's... Oh, I'm sorry. That is written by Rumiko Takahashi. My bad. And The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So those are the 10 nominees for this challenge. And what I'm going to do is I am going to blindfold myself. Ooh, kinky. Make sure that, yeah. And then play kind of a song. So it's going to be a little bit like musical chairs. And whatever book, I land on at the end of the song is the book that I'm going to read.
It's raining hard on the pathways of the local park in the midday sun. It's covered up, there's no rays on my face as I stare at the sun. And as the rain falls down, 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 I look around and I think to myself, be worse than this.
Okay guys, so the book that I picked was The Cat Who Ate Danish Martin. So if you guys don't know about the Cat Who series, it essentially follows this investigative reporter whose name I'm Jim Quillerin. That's a hard name to pronounce actually. And he basically, like I said, he's a reporter, and in each of the sort of the first 10 books, he is getting assigned to like a different sort of newspaper beat. And in this one, he gets assigned to sort of the interior design scene in the city. And, you know, murders happen. He's solving murders with his cat. And it's peak Braun. I don't like how the series went, like, you know, after sort of like, you know, he moves up to Canada. I know that sounds so weird, but that's literally the plot of the series. And so I think the beginning, like, you know, the first like 10 books in the Cat Who series is like really what I enjoyed, like, you know, reading. I like some of the older stuff, but like, I'm going to enjoy this. This is like definitely a comfort read for me. I've read this book so many times, and so it'll be nice just to like kind of reread it. I'm a little bummed that I didn't get to like, you know, try some of the newer books and some of like, you know, my other favorites. For instance, I really love The Halloween Party. But, you know, I'm just going to roll with it. And I definitely think I have, like, you know, a soft TBR for next month to, like, you know, actually try those out. So, hey, guys, you got bonus books. How about that? So, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming and talk about the rest of my Reading Rush TBR. So, here we are, back to, like present day me? That's right, I'm wearing a different shirt. That's how you know time has changed. That's causality, folks. And I chose, once again, The Cat Who Ate Danish Martyr. Next up was read a book completely outside or with the word outside in the title. Like, okay, that is pretty easy. And you're thinking, right, like, you know, that might be difficult for people living in the quarantine, and I completely agree. Luckily enough, bitch, I have a job right now, which, thank God, you know. That's how you do it. Okay. And I, like, you know, do a lot of commuting. I commute about half an hour, like, you know, every day to get to my job because it's on the other side of the town. And also, can we just stop and reflect for a minute on how transportation is really a giant discrimination when it comes to actually procuring employment? That's something that people should be thinking about. I'm just saying. Like, America sucks, guys. You already knew that. But anyway, like, you know, I do some commuting every day for work. And so I have about half an hour of like, you know, driving that I don't like to do in silence. So that's when I'm going to be listening to audiobooks. I have 2 audiobooks for, like, you know, my TBR, and a third one, which is the book of the month. Book of the month? The book club pick. There we go. And so let's actually talk about it. So the book that I chose to listen to outside is called The Bear by Andrew Krivak. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, Andrew. And so basically it's a story of a father and daughter who are living in a post-apocalyptic world, and it has a lot of sort of philosophical and survivalistic themes. So they're both sort of survivalists, but it also has sort of this like sort of old, like, you know, the pre-apocalyptic like old world sort of feel where they live in a, and that's just sort of like the sense I get from it, that they're living in a post-apocalypse where the pre-apocalypse is not so much a conscious memory, but rather sort of an ancestral one. That's a hard word to pronounce today. And so it seems really interesting, and I kind of love the idea of it, since, you know, it definitely sounds like something you would want to listen to, like, you know, on a car ride, or just like in a very sort of transitional like area. And so it sounds fun, and it's short, which is like my favorite thing about it. Sounds super fucking good. Next up is choose a book from a genre that you don't read very often. And I'm thinking, well, what genres do I not read very often? I think fantasy is definitely one of them. I like fantasy, I just don't read it very much. Nonfiction's another, though I'm getting better at that. Main thing, though, is I don't read a lot of romance. Oh, and I realize that most of my issues with romance are specifically sort of paperback contemporary romances. I like, you know, all that, like, sort of cutesy rom-com shit. I like, you know, historical romance because it has an interesting thing, and it's usually a lot more smutty. But I realize I just do not like a lot of, like, you know, those red little Harlequin paperbacks, which have just really bland main characters. And I said to myself, Ryan, you realize that, like, you know, boring romance protagonist kun is literally just the chick version of, like, all those, like, guys from, like, harem animes, and you like harem anime, and I'm thinking, you know what, you're right, like, maybe my own, like, dislike of it is really just because of my own gender bias, and, I just really need to address that, but at the same time, no one should have to read a boring protagonist, even if, like, the protagonist is meant to be insert for the reader. But let's move on from that. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to read, like, a romance book, and I'm just going to choose, like, the first, like, random trashy-looking romance book that, like, I find. I love the idea of reading trashy romance novels, and I'm not trying to say trashy as in a disparaging way. I really mean as in a mainstream or pulp setting. So it's not meant to be high literature, it's just meant to be a fun, raunchy ride. And, like, I love shit like that. I'm just like, what, your neighbor's an alien and you want to bone down? That sounds like something that I would just, like, totally, like, read for no reason. Like, it's fun. And I enjoy reading a lot of just random, very, like, sort of pulpy paperbacks. I love shit like that. So I wanted to have, like, a lot of fun sort of expanding my tastes and sort of, like, trying to read more romance and enjoy it, because I don't think that I should be limited by the books I read simply because of my own hang-ups and biases relating to my gender. And so I chose Duty and Desire by Brenda Jackson. Another thing is that I also picked it because it appeared to have a, let's say, African-American love interest. And I've literally never read a black romance before. And I'm thinking, well, why not? Like, why are romance protagonists predominantly middle-aged white women? That's kind of dumb. And so, like, it looked really good. Brenda Jackson is also a female person of color. And so I'm just like, yes, get that diversity, bitches, we need more of it. And so I'm ready to, like, just get it. What's the book about, Ryan? Far as I can tell, it's part of a series called the Westmoreland Saga, I believe, and it is involving essentially, like, rich guy nanny romance, which is not something, like, I'm particularly into. Honestly, I don't care about children when it comes to romance stories because, I'd like to think that, like, I would enjoy having children at some point, but I'm not necessarily warmed viscerally by the idea of one's lead interest being good with children, Maybe that is, once again, another gender bias where I wouldn't consider, like, I guess the paternal instincts of a love interest to be a defining characteristic on why they would be an attractive mate, but, like, that stuff isn't just, like, it isn't a yes in my book, but I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, they got kids. He's like, a cool daddy. He's like, a constructive father. And he wants to bang the nanny because it's an absentee mother. And I'm just like, I think that might work out. And I do, like, like stories where there is an, like, interaction with, like, an already pre-existing family and how the person's love interest really ties in and whether or not they're going to be able to mesh well. Because I can relate to that, I have a stepfather, like, my mother remarried. So, like, I can definitely understand sort of the impact from, like, my own life and how that might be reversed in a setting like that. So, I think it's going to be good. It looks like fun and it's short. So, it's like, even if I'm not super into it, it'll be over soon, Next up. So the last challenge is choose a book that is set on a different continent than your own. And I'm thinking, okay, that can be actually really fun. I could, like, be a little teehee bitch and choose something like The Witching World by Andrew Norton, which is, like, a portal fantasy, because that would technically, like, be a different continent. But I think that the book was implying a contemporary and sort of, I guess, like, realistic tone for that. So, not something set in deep space, not something that's set, like, in a fantasy world that doesn't have the same continents as ours. Excuse me, but rather a relatively contemporary or historical novel. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, we can work with that. And so, like, I was looking at my books, and I'm thinking, I could probably find something. I read a lot of classics, so, like, yeah, I could choose, like, an Alexander Dumas, or, like, some sort of British author, and that would work. But where's the fun in that? So I'm thinking, what books do I have that are kind of like, about traveling, about exploring other places? And my mind instantly made me think of the Miss Polyfax series. So if you don't know, because I doubt you would, it's not really that popular anymore, Miss Polyfax is written by Dorothy Gilman, and it is essentially a 1970s spy thriller series. It happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and that's, I believe, when she stopped writing it. And I fucking love the books. Like, they were a little obscure. They got made into one movie, like, one time, and I never saw it. But one of these days I will. And it pretty much just follows, like, an old lady. She's, like, in her 70s or something. And she's a fucking spy. And it's just, like, imagine if Betty White was in a James Bond film, and you kind of got an idea about it. And so it's, like, one half just, like, spy thriller, and one half just sort of travelogue documentary style. And so she's like, doing all this spy thriller stuff, but they also take so much time to kind of like describe the country and sort of the culture they're in. And a lot of it is really character driven, which is what Dorothy Gilman does so well. And so I own 5 of like the 36 books in the series, which I love all of them that I own. And I'm thinking, let's pick the one book that like, you've read the least. Because, I could choose my probably favorite, which is A Poem for Mrs. Polyphax, but I wanted to choose, like, just the one that I've read the least, like I just said, Ryan. So that would be The Elusive Mrs. Polyphax by, once again, Dorothy Gilman. It does not say. I'm pretty sure it's Turkey. But basically, it deals, let's see, there's 2 plots to it, right? One, she's going to, let's see, deliver some passports so that they can essentially get... Trying to remember the exact part. Yeah, they're going to deliver some passports so that they can basically get politically, like, valuable expatriates out of the country. But at the same time, it's also dealing with a grad student who's essentially being human trafficked into the country. Which you're like, what? That's crazy. And it is. Anyway, guys. Now that I kind of, just gushed over my, love for Mrs. Polyphax, let's talk about expectations. I'm a little nervous, I'm always a bit nervous whenever I'm starting a video or doing anything new. But I think I'm going to succeed. I've been really trying to find out sort of all the spaces in my week that I can read. And I'm going to definitely devote my, time and priorities towards that endeavor. At the same time, I've been working to sort of clear my schedule. I've been uploading a lot, on my channel. So that's all my quarantine vlogs, and I'm going to try to upload my 2 other vlogs that I planned for this month that I've already filmed, in the couple days before the Reading Rush. So that's going to be nice. I think one thing I'm definitely going to try for this Reading Rush is just work more on sort of my vlogging style, my vlogging aesthetic. Most of my videos are just me, just talking to you with, the singular background back here. And I realize that might not be always engaging since my videos are very long, and there's no variety to them, which is definitely something that I need to work on. Yeah, so, I'm going to try to, work on my aesthetic a bit. And I think that, I try to have an aesthetic, but I ain't good with that shit. I'm not a visual person, I'm more verbal. So, it's not something that comes off super easily for me, but I'm going to work on it. Maybe, I'll just, sit outside sometimes, or I'll make myself, a cup of tea, or just do something else, throughout the week that's kind of, fun and interesting. So, I'm really excited for, the Reading Rush, because it definitely pushes myself as a vlogger, pushes myself as sort of a video creator, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, just try something new. I always love trying new things. I think, that's kind of just, what's going to go on. When Monday hits around, when Reading Rush officially starts, and we're just boom, boom, let's go, racehorses. I'm going to be reading 2 books to start. I like to read 2 books concurrently, 1 audiobook, 1 book. That's how my reading, habits, that's what I was looking for earlier, goes. That's going to be The Bear by, I know his name, Andrew Kravick, something like that, and Ghostmobile by Kathy Kennedy Tapp. So usually in the mornings, I tend to half hour commute. Usually I have 20 minutes before work. So 20 to 15 of those I'm going to be spending reading this book, and then read some more when I get home. So that's just how it's going to go. I will see you bright and early Monday morning. I might be vlogging after work. I might vlog a little bit before work. It just depends on how time goes, So we'll see. So yeah. Stay tuned.